Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So every so often I find myself editing a video realizing that I made a complete blunder while I was doing it, and it's only in retrospect that I realize that either A, the video turns out to be completely unpublishable, or I take great pains to make an introduction like this one to tell you what I did wrong and salvage at least some of the work that I put into making the video in the first place. So this is a classic example of it that I'm getting ready to post right here. I was putting a new fuse into the electrical system to prevent fires, short circuits, whatever, things that fuses are generally good for. And I realized that I went about it completely backwards. So I'm going to post a little, or make a little PowerPoint slide to kind of show what I'm talking about just before the video starts. But realize that sometimes you don't realize you made a mistake until you step back from the problem and look exactly what it is that you did. And this is one of those cases. So it's been quite some time since I actually made this video, since I did the mod to the car. And when I was through editing it, the light dawned on me that here we go. So putting a fuse between the battery and the alternator is not a bad idea, but where you put that fuse makes a huge difference in what you're trying to prevent. So if the line from the battery goes through bulkheads, firewalls, things of that nature, where there's a likelihood of chafing or something like that, or interference from other parts, and you're worried that you're going to get at some point down the road from vibration and whatnot a short circuit to ground. Well, the alternator can put out, in my case, about 135 amps. All right, so if the alternator is feeding electrical energy to the battery to charge it and to power the accessories in the car, and there's a short to ground, then the most it's going to be pumping through there is about 135 amps or so. So if there is a fuse in between the alternator and that point of failure, or that short to ground, then that will prevent 135 amps worth of damage. And if you shut the key off and the engine stops, the alternator stops moving, and the current stops, and your problem is essentially solved at that point, or at least to the point where you buy a new alternator or fix other damage. Now, if the battery shorts to ground on the way from the, well, not on the way from the alternator, but from the alternator to the battery, if you don't have that fuse, if the short to ground happens on the run from the battery to the point that it touches the chassis, now you've got the entire capacity of the battery pumping energy into it, and that is what can cause a fire. Much more important to fuse that section than it is to fuse the section from the alternator to, say, the firewall, if that's the concern. So I've got about a 6 to 8 foot run between my alternator and my battery, and I realize now that it's much more important to put a fuse between the battery, as close to the battery, in this case from the solenoid. Now I can make a diagram of this, and maybe I will, between the battery and the potential short to ground than it is from the alternator to the potential short to ground. So I know that's a kind of it'll make a lot more sense when I put the picture up, and I'll probably have it concurrently with what I'm talking about, so this makes more sense. It doesn't negate the methods of work and the techniques I use to put this particular fuse into the electrical system. It just completely changes where I'm going to put it. So in the video that you're about to watch, I put this fuse in the engine compartment near the alternator. That is completely the wrong place to put it, and I'm going to go back and change it on the car after having thought about this a little bit, and put it between the solenoid, which is the closest point to the battery, where it then goes through the chassis instead. So the fuse will just simply be repositioned from where it is in the engine compartment. That will be just a steady run all the way to the solenoid, or to the fuse, and that's the way it's going to be. And I'll show you, not on this particular video because I want to get it posted, but I'm going to put it in there. And so before you guys make a bunch of comments that I don't know what I'm doing, you're right, I don't know what I'm doing half the time, but that's okay because I figure it out, and hopefully I figure it out in time so that it just doesn't become a problem before this. So I just feel the need to put this in the beginning of the video to prevent any misunderstandings later. Sorry for being long-winded. Let me get back to my editing, and I'll get this video posted up there with the caveat that I just described at the beginning. So thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. So I was out driving a little bit the other day and logging some data and doing what I do, doing some tuning, and just about ready to get back to the house, and started running a little bad. So I got home, checked the log, and just on a whim, I looked at the battery voltage, and it had crashed down from, you know, the normal 13.5, 13.6 down to like 11.8 or 12. And so immediately that tells me that the alternator's not working. So just one of the, I won't call it a shortcut, but when I was putting the alternator to battery wiring circuit together, I did want some fuse protection on that. And so what I did is I got a one of these types of fuses right here. I'll try to get a good picture of that. So put it on a background where you guys can see it. Now that's a 175 amp fuse right there, and the alternator is only a 130 amp alternator. So I figured this is mainly for short circuit protection in case something, part of that charging wire touches the body of the car somewhere in between the alternator and the battery, there'd be something to blow. Well, because it's got these nice little holes in the sides of it, essentially what I did was I just put one side of that to the alternator and the other side to the charging wire and bolted them together. And I thought I was being pretty slick on that, but this is the second one that has failed. And so it's not failing due to electrical, it's failing due to mechanical stresses. So this type of fuse connected directly to the alternator lug and then connected to the battery. I've got the battery disconnected, by the way. Connected to the feed line looks like a good idea in theory, but the vibrations tend to just trash these things. So that's going to be a fix. If it happens once, it's a fluke. If it happens twice, it's just a bad design. And so bad design, this guy's out. I went on Amazon and I picked up, there's a lot of different varieties of these. This just happens to be the one I picked up. And it's essentially takes what are called, I guess, ANL fuses. And a lot of these are used for stereo installations. You can see they've got typical stereo type cable connections, and that's fine. Electricity is electricity. And so what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is I'm going to take this and I'm going to mount it down here. Now I kind of racked my brain over the routing of this. Before I had the alternator to battery cable going from the alternator down the valley here and then in there to keep it away from the hot section of the headers and the turbo, and that was fine, except for when I do that now, there's no place to put this. And although it's kind of large, I want this mounted to the body in a way that's not going to, you know, experience the same vibration loads as the engine has. So looked at putting it back here on the firewall somewhere, but I'm really running short on room without repositioning some of this other stuff, and I just don't want to do that. And so I've got this area down here in the inner fender well that I cleaned up a while back, and I'm just going to mount it down here. And so I'm going to mount it down there, and then the cable that used to run around the engine is now going to run around the inner fender and connect down here to one side of this, and then the other side is going to go down underneath the air cleaner and underneath the alternator and come up from the bottom onto the alternator post. And I've made provisions to keep it away from the not the down pipe, but the crossover pipe from the turbo, so it's not touching that, and it's away from basically any other sources of major heat. It's still going to get a little warm over here just because the turbo's here, but that's a good 6 to 7 inches of air gap there, and I'm really not too concerned. But just because I'm overly fanatical about heat control, I did pick up some more of this heat sheath from the auto parts store, and I always wind up buying the one that's on the shelf of these, and I could probably get it a lot cheaper in bulk off the net or at one of the race shops, but it is what it is. While I was there, I also picked up some more of this self-fusing repair tape, which I really like. Again, probably cheaper online, but I was there and I saw it and I'm like, oh, I want some of that. And then I also picked up some plugs for NPT pipe plugs, because I needed a few, because there's one other thing that I'm trying to fix, and I'll get to that in another video, but it has to do with, again, the PCV and vacuum system, which consumes way too much thought time in my mind. But there's some drivability things that I want to address, and in order to troubleshoot it, I've got to be able to block off some stuff temporarily just to see what's going on. And so I'll show that troubleshooting process in another video. But for today, I'm just going to work on getting this electrical line from the alternator back to the battery squared away with a fuse. I debated on whether or not one's really necessary or not. I mean, when it comes to fusing, you just have to do a risk assessment. You know, how likely is it that something's going to just randomly chafe and connect to short to ground and cause a fire, which is terrible. We don't want that happening. But at the same point, you can't put a fuse really everywhere, because some of the loads, especially from the solenoid to the starter, carry so many amps that a fuse would be ridiculously large, and I've seen that done a bunch of times with terrible results. So that's one run that's never going to be fused, in my mind at least. But when I've got long runs that are carrying high amperage, like from the alternator to the battery, and I want to make sure that there's at least something in there that can give before it starts a fire. So that's why we're going to do it. And I'll show a little bit of this, but it's really just a matter of mounting this fuse block down here and running the one wire from the alternator to that, and then the existing wire that goes to the battery to the other side. Also got tired of not having these things and trying to sort through the help section in the auto parts store. I bought just an assortment of these off Amazon. I think these are probably, I think I paid about 20 bucks for this whole set. And now I should never have to go searching for these things again, and they're in various sizes. So that's the, you guys go ahead and pronounce that for me. I'm only going to try. So, but there's the, there's the part that, is pretty typical these days. But yeah, they should do the trick. All right, so that's that. I found one of these in my kit. It's a 4x5/16. I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see that, but it is the right size. I'm using 4-gauge welding wire for my alternator to battery connection. I found that this welding wire is nice and flexible. It's got lots and lots of strands, and it'll handle a lot of amperage. So temperature, if you care, let's see, this one's rated at 105C, which is a little over 200, probably 225 or so Fahrenheit. That's fine. I'm going to put some sheathing around it anywhere where it runs, where it runs by the turbo piping. So I haven't cut it to length yet, because one side's going to be bare to go into this. We'll give it a shot. I checked it out. It looked like it was going to be all right for that number 4 size cable. So we'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens. Worst comes to worst, it fails, and I just start over again. But for the most part, I've seen this done a lot of different ways. I don't have a crimper. I've always had good luck doing it this way. You can be a solder or crimp nerd all you want. I've never had any of my soldering connections fail. You can tell I've done this a couple times. I just grab a couple pieces of wood here, crimp this guy, get it in here. I'm talking, but I'll probably fast forward through this part anyways. So get it in there like that. All right, got my torch here, and I'm lacking solder. They sell solder plugs that go down in there, but I'll just do it this way. Oops, as I drop it in there and it disappears forever. Cue the fast forward. Thought I had it all the way through. All right, that'll take some amps. Sometimes you'll see a little solder come out from the pinch areas there, but she's good. She's not going anywhere. There you go. Figure out the length of this. So I'll temporarily hook it up there. It's resting on the intake pipe. They don't get that hot, but still, we'll see about that in a little while. Anyhow, I'm going to cut that right about there. 4 gauge is just about the biggest I can cut with the size lineman's pliers that I got. All right, here's something that is just really stupid and annoying. All right, see how this side's got the Allen key on this side? You'd think they'd put them both on the same side. So like no matter how I stick this in here now, I can get to the Allen key from one side and the other side's gonna be a pain in the ass. So it doesn't matter whether I put it this way or put it this way. One of these has gotta be tightened from the side. And there's no way to like turn this around or anything. What, oh my God, whoa, crush people. So I got to make sure I put this far enough away from the edge so I can get this Allen key in and out like that. These are the kind of things that you don't notice until after. I'm glad I caught that before I did it. This side's easy. You can put it in there and twist it. I wish they were both on the other side, but they're not. So I'll just make sure that when I mount this, I got enough room to do it. I don't want to put it up on the side like this. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to put it right there. And that's where it's going to be. I got mounted in there, and now it's just a matter of trying to strip this and get it inset into this first one here. So we're going to work on that next. I'm going to put the heat sheath on it first. All right, a little wrestling later, and got them both nice and tight on there. The red wire there is just the alternator signal, light signal wire. It goes to the alternator, but I didn't have it hooked up before. It's just for the idiot light in the driver's compartment. It's there if I ever want to run it to the alternator. I need a special connector for that alternator. So essentially, we got some heat wrap around this one to keep it away from there. I'll probably put one P clip on there just to keep it out of the way, and the other one's protected all the way up to the alternator itself. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. I couldn't with the camera, but it's pretty self-explanatory. And then now that it's finished, I should be able to just put this lid on here, pretty much be done with it. So always trying to make my electrical system as bulletproof as possible. And that's a 200 amp circuit breaker in there, or not a circuit breaker, but a fuse. So if I blow that, then I know that I've got a problem somewhere, but at least vibration is not going to be the issue. These are designed to be in the engine bay or on the firewall, so we'll see what kind of longevity I get out of this one. I'm going to go ahead and tighten down the bolt on the alternator here and figure out just a little attachment to kind of keep this up and out of the way so it doesn't have a tendency to want to rub on anything, and we'll pretty much be done there. So good, done. I'm gonna hit balls and she won't like it. Just leave her in there for a minute.